Welcome back, chat. Little disclaimer, part of the video today did not get recorded. We do have the audio, but for our visual listeners, just giving you a little heads up, there will be a section of the video that you will not be able to watch as it is audio only. We apologize for the inconvenience, and we will try and do better next time, but thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the Woodsmen Podcast. Okay.
You know, same thing with Blackbeard. You would assume he had a black beard. Like, it would be weird if, you know, you heard the name Blackbeard and he had, like, a ginger. That's wild. The attack from down under.
Salty Spadoo.
And one of the only cures to it is shooting up liquid mercury up your weenie hole, bro. They just attacked the ship butt naked, and the French surrendered before anyone pulled out a single knife, single sword, single gun.
I'm such a loser, sweating God, I'm the worst.
Welcome back to the Woodsmen Podcast. We're your hosts, Joey Rucker
And Brent Murphy.
What is it about pirates that makes our eyes light up? Perhaps it's the thrill of adventure, the excitement of sailing into uncharted waters and uncovering new lands. Or maybe it's the romanticized notion of being on the seven seas, seeking treasures and claiming what's rightfully yours. Despite common misconceptions, our perceptions of pirates largely differ from the reality of the 18th century piracy. Today, we'll delve into the captivating stories of some remarkable pirates. However, you'll be left to ponder, were they truly as notorious as they're portrayed? Or were they simply defying the status quo? Join us for this week's episode of the Woodsmen Podcast.
Welcome back, chat. You know what? It hasn't been that long because we're finally on schedule, man.
Yeah, for once.
You know, after probably a month, maybe 2 months of taking a break, we finally, I think, have things on track, which is working out pretty well. So
It's about time.
you know, but we do have housekeeping per usual. It's not a lot, but we'd like to reiterate a few couple points. One, Cabin 13 Productions in full swing. You guys should be hearing the name a lot more. Should be seeing a lot more projects, and got a lot more to come. Very excited. Hopefully, eventually, we'll get to the point where we'll announce what we're actually doing besides this. But, you know, we're getting there, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't make any promises
We
just
didn't make
yet.
any promises, but we're getting there. So, yeah, we have Cabin 13 coming up. You know, we're back on schedule, as we've reiterated.
That'll be the nice thing. I'm very excited to, like, now that we are on schedule, I'm excited to finally get back into, like, choosing topics and talking about random stuff. Like,
Yes.
we were going on a good roll there where we were, like, Mandela effect, time travel, and, like, every episode I was, like, getting more and more excited
finding
for.
some crazy things, too.
Yeah.
Like, just finding, like, really, really cool notes, you know, some good research, which, you know, I feel like we were lacking on before, but after this episode, this is probably the most research I've ever done for an episode. Easy. Easy. But anyways, again, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or stories about the podcast, make sure you reach out. We're still looking at our email to find that no one emails us.
Not a single one of you has reached out. How rude is that?
I mean, I don't know how many times we've said the email, and somehow still
You
nothing.
should know the email by now.
Yeah. But if you don't, it's called thewoodsmanpod@gmail.com.
So please.
Please, email us.
Send us
It
some
would be
subs.
cool. It'd be cool to hear from some people that aren't our parents. So.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much all we got, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're ready to walk the plank, I'm ready to walk the plank, bro.
I am ready.
Because
Let's do it.
finally talking about pirates. Arg. My God, dude. How long have we waited for this moment?
I don't know anymore. It's been so long.
Dude, chat, let me tell you. we had so many episodes on that old laptop where we were so hopeful. We had so many dreams. We had so many thoughts, and Pirates was on the first of the list. I'm pretty sure that's probably
like
one
the
of
biggest
the
one,
first
yeah.
like topics we were like, we have to do an episode about it. And then, like I said, a laptop got stolen, and we kind of got pushed back quite a bit.
Yeah, I think at one point we finally did have the opportunity to finally make the pirate episode after the laptop got stolen, and then I don't think either of us really wanted to put in the effort for all the research, you know?
Well, yeah, because let me tell you, this is probably the most research we have ever done. Like, at least for me, this is the most extensive I've ever...
I'd have to look back and see what my most... this might be it, because I did a lot of research too, but I feel like I had... There was like one other episode I swear I did a lot of research on. I can't remember what, though.
Dude, I don't know, man. I mean, we do a fair amount of research, but, you know, we normally just kind of talk, like, out of our butts most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, for sure. But this one, I mean, it's my fault. I said if we're doing a pirate episode, it's got to be done right, and
Yep.
I think we're going to do it some justice.
I think it'll be good.
So, well, I think the first thing we should probably talk about is where did pirates even come from for you, bro? Like, what was, like, the first thing that you went through, like, either as a child or, like, well, first of all, what was the age, I guess, that you were like, this is kind of cool. Like, this is cool, and it's not fantasy. Like, this is, like, some stuff that actually happened in history.
That's a different question. Like, when I first started to like pirates, I, like, just the idea of pirates had to just have been, you know, I feel like most people growing up, which was, like, the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
But I don't know when it first really clicked to me, like, oh, this is, like there was real deal pirates out there, and, like, they were... I think I don't remember the actual era, but I remember there was a point in time where Blackbeard stopped becoming like a cartoon character in a way to me, and he started to become like, oh, this dude actually like was out there and was crazy, like
was just doing stuff,
just
dude,
doing
stuff.
And I think that must have been sometime around high school, I believe, where it finally started to click. Oh, some of these guys are real. Like, some of these dudes actually did stuff like crazy.
Like, they're not just stories from like Treasure Island.
No.
Like, these are like real people, like real things.
I don't know who Blackbeard must have just been one of the bigger names for me, but I feel like he's bigger for most people. You have been much more into the whole pirate thing than I have comparatively. And so I'm curious to see, like, what your answer would be.
Well, I mean, like, a lot of my whole, I feel, existence revolves around water. Like,
That's a good point, yeah.
like, my whole life, that has just been, like, a staple of, like, who I am. That's, like, a part of me. I love the ocean, and the ocean specifically, you know? Like, so many people are terrified of just going to the beach. Mm-hmm. And I have no problem getting in the water and just swimming out. Like, that's just not, that's not a thing for me. But that's always been a part of my life. And I think when I kind of grew up and realized that people traverse the water, like, they were like, okay, my whole life is going to revolve around that. Like, that is just such an insane concept to me. But I want to say probably Pirates of the Caribbean. That was probably, like, the first thing that kind of get me really involved, really into it. I actually, if I can find some pictures, I was Jack Sparrow as a child for Halloween. And
that's awesome.
Let me tell you, there's just stories in of that itself where it's just like, that's the move. You know, that is the complete move. But I would say getting older, like you said, probably around high school, playing video games, I think really kind of opened my mind to that, because, you know, we went to a school where we really didn't touch on much of that kind of stuff. We really touched on, like, the religious parts of history versus, like, this whole section of something that was happening. And I don't think it was until, like, we really kind of played, like, Uncharted 4, like, games like that, where it kind of, like, opened the mind to, like, oh, there are people out here that are so mysterious just in their nature that we base video games off of them and like base it off of like relatively factual things. I mean, especially with the whole Henry Avery story plot in like Uncharted 4, going to Madagascar, going then to like, you know, what's believed as a pirate haven, such as like Nassau, like all this kind of stuff really kind of, it overlaps and it connects. And like, yeah, it's obviously video game fiction, but like there's such a big truth to that as well that I think is just fascinating.
It's interesting that you have the gaming aspect to like the upbringing of your pirate love, because I didn't have it. I remember I played.
That's true, because you didn't even play Black Flags either, and that was like a deciding thing for me.
I didn't enjoy it. And honestly, it almost turned me off of pirates because I was so bad at the game, which looking back just makes me sad, because it wasn't really even that it was a bad game, it was that I sucked at it.
I mean, you just didn't like the sailing aspect. And I mean, it's understandable, but you know, you go back and play the game now, and it's like on top of just the era you're in, on top of it just being a really well-made game for being 2014, still holding up to 2024. You know, great gameplay, great story. You have so many, you know, little cameos like Blackbeard, like Captain Kidd, like just all these people. And you're just like, I mean, it's fake, but these were real people. Like these people knew each other.
Yeah.
Like think of like a small world. Think about traveling the world by sea and knowing these people. Like, you know them by their ship. Like, that's crazy.
It scares me to think that they made such names for themselves, like that they would be almost like you hear, like, imagine being the just regular townspeople back then, and like you hear stories.
Yeah,
and, like,
you hear the name Blackbeard, and you don't even really know what he looks like,
but you know of him. Everyone knows of him. Yeah,
and it's so crazy. And I mean, if we're gonna talk Blackbeard, I actually don't have any like storyline wise involving Blackbeard. But I told you before this podcast started, I had to give such a crazy explanation for Blackbeard.
Okay.
So, as people have heard, everyone thinks Blackbeard was like this crazy, like warmonger type of, you know, like just very abrasive pirate, you know, just looking for a fight. That actually wasn't Blackbeard, bro. He actually just kind of like ruled based on fear. Like he wanted people to be afraid of him. Never really too bad of a guy. But towards like the last few months of his life,
I think I know where you're going.
He was pretty mad. And you want to know the reason why?
Why is that?
So Blackbeard contracted syphilis, right? And apparently, like, it's not a very treatable thing back then. It leaves you pretty mad. I mean, I would too. Especially when one of the only cures to it is shooting up liquid mercury up your weenie hole, bro.
So, every time you've told me this, it really just catches me off guard.
No, dude, so like when you look it up, some of the things that they found, because Blackbeard's ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, sank off the coast of Florida. So it's like really close to like here, like in the Americas, not really like Britain or anything like that.
Sure.
But you can find the shipwreck. Like you can find it. Like it's easy. They know where it's at. You can locate it, all this kind of stuff. But when they went down there to like find like things there, they found like a urethra syringe, like actually made for that. And that's how they like had found out, like, oh, because he had syphilis, he had to do this, because that's one of the only ways to.
I think I've officially decided that I don't want to be a pirate.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
End of the episode.
Dude?
Thank you for watching the Woodsmen.
Thank you for watching. But yeah, so wanted to just give you that fun story because I thought it was pretty wild. So let's get into the golden age of piracy, dude. So obviously we kind of think, you know, as people, that this stuff happened for a long time, you know, that this was part of a, you know, 100 or so year type of thing. But really the golden age of piracy started from 1714 to 1726. So it's really not a long time. That's like what, like 12 years or so. I'm not good at quick math, but I think that's around 12 years.
Don't ask me. I'm worse at math than you are.
Which is not a long amount of time, like at all. Like that's like peak.
This
peak
is the
piracy.
span of what the golden age was.
Yeah. So the golden age, where like just everyone was trying to be a pirate, you know, type of thing. Yeah, was in between 1714 and 1726. So before we also get started with this, I will say a lot of my information, if you guys are looking for really good, really solid information, highly recommend checking out Real Pirates Podcast. It's a podcast made by Spotify.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a Spotify original podcast. So it's really good quality for us, you know, like podcast nerds. Really good sound beds, really good like music, very legit. They have a lot of historians on there, a lot of references from books from people where their entire lives this is all they've done.
Yeah.
It's just research on this kind of stuff. So I highly recommend checking it out. We will be referring to some of those like sources throughout this because they had a lot of information that, you know, was good. So why not use it, you know? But yeah, shout out to Spotify. But so like I said, the golden age of piracy, 1714, right?
Yeah.
This all kind of started when the War of Spanish Succession ended, right? So that war was long. 12-year war. 1701 to 1713, just war.
Can you imagine fighting a war for that long?
No. Dude, I couldn't even imagine. So, like, you know how there's some of these battles where like, oh, and the battle raged on for like 6 days. And I'm like, 6 days? Imagine 12 years, dude.
Yeah.
12-year war, man. And you got to think 1700s. It ain't no cars. It ain't no tanks. You know, it's like a lot of it was naval. A lot of it was naval, military. And that's part of the reason why this is such a crazy time in history. So this war, we're kind of going to be talking more from the British side because a lot of this stemmed because of the British, unfortunately. Like a lot of things I feel have. But in history, I don't know about now. I don't know nothing about British history now, but I do know in history there's some crazy stuff. So for the British, this war was essentially a race for European supremacy within like the trading world. So basically, whoever was going to win this war was going to have pretty much a monopoly over everything kind of going on, which is, you know, bad. Monopolies are bad because then no one can do anything. You know, one person owns everything, you can't do anything. So because of this, something that happened was the British cut off trade from everybody. There was no imports from anywhere. So imagine what that does to the economy when you just refuse to take anything, any imports, any exports, not just on them, but at this time you also have American colonies that are now starting up as well.
Yeah.
So you got a place that's not even a real, you know, country that's starting, and they can't get any supplies. They can't get any help. They pretty much got to be the ones to do it themselves. That's pretty much the only option.
Yeah.
So this is happening worldwide. This is a worldwide thing happening. We hit 1713, and a peace treaty was finally established called the Peace of Utrecht. Very hard word.
And this
for me
was
to
a
pronounce.
peace treaty between who?
And this was a peace treaty pretty much within everybody. This was because, like I said, this is in a way almost like a world war.
Okay. Yeah.
Obviously, like, America really didn't have to worry about anything because it didn't exist by this time. So really it's, you know, the French against the Spanish against the British, you know, and it's just this never-ending circle of fighting, right? A lot of it, like we said, was naval, which means, you know, everything is pretty slow. You got to think about, you know, traveling, you know, cross-continental. You know, some stuff could take a really long time. Part of that also means that a lot of this history is hearsay. You know, you got a lot of back and forth, like getting information across the continent, you know, like continent-wide information where it's like, if that boat sinks with information, you're not going to know anything, you know? So a lot of these stories are lost to history that scholars are just now finding, which I think is just such an insane concept to think
It's
about.
super cool.
Because you hear about the 1700s, you're like, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, 200 years, but that's not, or 300 years, that's not crazy amount of time, you know, but there's
Not
so
in a
much
long
history just
span.
within that lost. So,
Mm-hmm.
which I find just very crazy. So once this peace treaty was signed, the British Navy no longer needed, obviously, as many seamen or sailors
Okay.
to do anything because there's no need.
Yeah,
You
there's a
know,
peace
there's
treaty going
no
on.
need. There's no big navy.
Everybody agreed to get along.
Everybody agreed to get
And it
along.
stayed that way, right?
And it stayed that way. Well, in a way.
Okay.
So, sadly, due to this, a lot of merchant sailors, a lot of just, you know, anyone trying to make a trade route didn't need as many sailors anymore. As far as, like, there is a overwhelming supply of sailors, and there's not the demand for it anymore.
Yeah.
So, how do you get around that, dude? These people basically cut their wages to, like, an unlivable wage. I'm telling you, like, sailing is some of the craziest work ever. I mean, you're not even guaranteed to come back,
yeah.
you know, from a voyage.
Especially during that time. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now imagine going through that and then someone giving you $1 for like months of work. That's just essentially what they were doing because they can essentially do whatever because it's like I can find someone to do the same job for a third of the price, you know?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this caused a lot of drinking, a lot of bars, and a lot of depression, you know,
As
it
Yeah.
would. So we go through this whole thing. We go through this pretty traumatic event in history. And we have a quote from Colin Woodard that is the author of the book Republic of Pirates. So this is someone who has pretty much spent his whole life talking about this.
Okay.
And he says that essentially tens of thousands of sailors were out of work. This is not, you know, like a
No,
couple
that's-
thousand. Tens of
That's an
thousands of
insane
people
number. Yeah.
are just not able to live. Like these people have been doing this their whole lives. People were not living that long back then. You know, if you're 30 and you're a sailor, you most likely have been a sailor for like 20 years of your
most of
life.
your life,
You know,
yeah.
like, so insane. So the demand for the sailors was now in abundance, and merchant sailors would cut their wages in half by thirds, you know, leaving these people essentially working to die, which is just insane. So most of them were driven into poverty, obviously, because most of them, like I said, had been seamen at birth. They didn't really have any other skills
Can't
that
support
they were good at,
themselves.
you know. So they go through that whole thing, and this treaty opened up trade for Britain, France, Spain, all of them, but that leaves the Caribbean as the epicenter for everything.
Okay.
Now, in terms of the Caribbean is close to the coast of Florida. So now we're crossing into like more of the area of like the Americas, right? So this is like essentially where all this trade starts coming in, right? I know there's a lot of information. There's a lot of
no.
information to take in, but then it's all going to make sense. I
No,
promise.
it's interesting.
So,
yeah. Go on.
so you got all this trade that is now shifted from essentially just Britain supplying Britain, France supplying France, Spain supplying Spain, all this kind of stuff. You have all of this now shifted into one generalized area with another country that's not even a founded country yet. And it's just, like you would assume, it's just a mess.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on. And because it's in such a short amount of time, it's what makes it even crazier and like the need for a radical change to happen, right? So while this is happening, one of the biggest things that especially America like has seen the backlash of now, hundreds of years later, is the Mediterranean sugar trade, which basically it was essential. It basically took sugar that was from the Mediterranean seas, and they obviously moved it over here. But they found with the climate in the Caribbean and all of these, you know, like island type, these tropical places, it took to the climate skyrocketed, right? Which means the production is now, instead of having to take things from really far away and transport it, you now can just keep it right here in this centralized location, which is already a trade epicenter.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think that does? It needs work. Who's going to do the work?
All the
Not seamen.
not semen.
What is our country sadly resorted to?
Gotcha.
So this started big slave trade.
Okay.
This has started a whole other can of worms. So that's why I said there's so much stuff happening in such a short amount of time that's just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, yeah, slavery was still happening, but nowhere near to what is going to happen because of
this whole situation.
Yes, because it's like now we have a whole new product that we've never had before. Sugar was not a big, thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got something that is in such high demand that can now be produced in high quantities. People do anything to find cheap labor, bro.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like that's what started this giant thing that we're still facing today.
Yeah.
Just based off of this one event in time, just has just rocked the boat. So
See what you did there.
boat puns. Ahoy.
Man.
So going So anyways, so that's setting up that major part, right?
Sure.
So now we're going to Port Royal. This is also in the British colonies at this point. So we're taking it from the Caribbean, the Bahamas, over back to there. So at this time, this is where all of those sailors that have been going through it is hanging out, right? They just got back from the war. They just realized they're out of a job for probably the rest of their life, essentially, because some of these guys, I mean, think about all these pirate shows we watch. Missing an arm, missing a leg, missing fingers, missing eyes. Like, this is a scary time, especially being in the naval, just the Navy in general, like going through a war.
Yeah.
Crazy. So
I would not want to fight a war on a ship.
not in that time,
like,
dude.
I love
a cannonball
sailing.
just destroying you.
Heck no.
Like impact by cannonball, you just have no body anymore. There's nothing
play,
you can do.
Sea of Thieves together a lot, and we get into these moments where our ship is attacked, and then we have to repair our ship. There's no way in real life I would be able to manage.
I'd be dead so fast,
so
dude.
fast,
I would be
dude.
dead so fast.
Yeah.
There's no way. I'm trying to bail water while people are jumping on my ship and hitting me with a freaking shotgun, dude.
I would take the dinghy so fast and just
run.
bail.
Just run to take the treasure. I don't need it, dude.
Yeah.
I don't need it. It's not worth my life. That's all I'm saying.
No.
So we go back to Port Royal. One of the biggest names you will hear in pirate history, to be honest, Benjamin Hornigold. You even hear his name in things such as, like Treasure Island. You hear it in shows like Black Sails, all this stuff. Main game changer, and he's actually like really kind of what bounced the whole golden age of piracy to where it's at. So same year, 1714, we see this man plotting something, right? Obviously, he's a hardened sailor. He's around like, his 40s to 50s. And this is all this man's been doing his whole life, right? So to him, this is like a big slap to the face. This is a seasoned veteran, essentially, being told, sorry, figure it out. I don't know about you, but I'd be pretty freaking mad, dude.
Oh, yeah.
I would be fuming, right? But somehow bro doesn't see that it's Britain's fault for putting him out of work, right? He still kind of sees it as like, well, I understand the war ends and so all this stuff. He's not going to take it sitting down, though. So,
Oh, no.
bro was a privateer before.
Okay.
And if you know anything about privateers, bros were basically sanctioned outlaws. They were pretty much given a letter by the crown saying, yeah, attack all these Spanish ships, do whatever, like any means necessary as long as it's for the crown. And these people essentially got paid way better wages than like any Navyman. Because any Navyman, they were pretty much exploited. Like, they were going through everything a normal sailor would go through, but their captain would get, like, half of the profits from anything they got, and then the crew gets, like, a measly third. Now, imagine sharing a third of any profit when there's, like, 50 to 60 men on a ship. That's really not that good. But privateers sanctioned way more money. I think the captains took maybe only a third, and then that leaves, 2/3 open for the crew and everyone else. So it leaves a lot more money. And this is what this man was doing within the war. So he basically got the idea that let's just keep doing it. Let's just keep doing it just without the crown telling us we can. Right? And he kind of basically justified it in his head as like, as long as we're not attacking British ships, then we're still not technically doing wrong. Like we're not as bad as like anyone else, Yeah. So one cool thing is, guess who was right there by his side the whole time while this is happening?
Who's that?
One man named Edward Teach, also known as Blackbeard, but not called Blackbeard by this point. So he was actually one of Hornigold's like right-hand men, bro. Whatever Hornigold wanted, he did. But he was learning. He was not a big boy player straight from the beginning. He had to learn just like everybody else, which I think is pretty cool,
Well, people don't think about that as often. All these pirates and their like legendary personas, nobody thinks about like the fact that they all had to grow up and get to that persona. And like so much work had to be.
And a lot of people don't understand that a lot of these people were not old.
Yeah.
A lot of these people were young, dude. I mean, like Hornigold's an exception because he had been doing it for so long. He was just a seasoned war veteran essentially, but some of these people will see, I mean, just like, the next main topic that's coming up, bro essentially was fighting in the Spanish War at like 13 years old. Which is Sam Bellamy, but that's gonna be Bellamy. That's later down the line. But I mean, bro was only 13 when he was fighting in a war. So it's like you gotta like shift your thinking to thinking that these people are like our age starting. Bros were starting when they were kids, dude. Like, which is insane. So I mean, these people, imagine someone who started from 10 years old to now 40. Bro has seen and done some things. Yeah. So
got a lot of experience under his belt.
Exactly. So of course he was like the perfect person to start this whole revolution. He was the person who, if anyone was gonna have the knowledge and the know-how to pull something like this off, it was gonna be him, right? So his first plan, obviously, you need a base of operations. You need somewhere that you can go, somewhere that's going to be easy, somewhere that you can get in and out of fast and be able to trade, right? Because you got to think a lot of this stuff, if you're going to trade it, some of these people may not even want to trade with you simply because you're a pirate and it's, stolen goods, right? Yeah. So you got to be in a good position to where like either these people need these goods or they're willing to turn a blind eye. Right. Can
I ask a question just out of genuine curiosity and not knowing history? It's the golden age of pirates. But pirates existed before this?
Yes, sir.
Were they like called pirates? Was it like an actual... this was just the golden age of it.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that because we're actually about to talk about someone very famous that was before the age of piracy.
Okay.
So what better place was this man going to go to than the failed British colony of Nassau, right? Hear this name all the time.
Yeah.
But wanna know where it originally came from?
Where's that?
It didn't start with Benjamin Hornigold going there. It actually started in the 1600s. I don't know when the colony like was first officially there.
Yeah.
But it was made popular by pirates by our main man Henry Avery.
Okay.
So when Henry Avery stole treasure from the Grand Mughal of India, this was like one of the biggest fortunes anyone has ever come across, which is like insane. But when he stole that treasure, he had to go and offload it somewhere else, right? So he went from Madagascar, and then he went to Nassau. And from Nassau, he sold his ship, and we assume he sold his fortune. And to this day, no one knows where the fortune went, and no one knows where he went. To this day, there's nothing in history where people have been able to find where this man went.
It's insane. It's absolutely it's such a cool like part of history when you think like it's scary in a way, but it's also like super interesting.
Like, bro came up out of nowhere, did some crazy things, and then just disappeared.
Yeah.
And is like known in history now, and people still don't even really know the full story. Like, people don't even know when he died.
Yeah, people
they don't know where he went.
They
don't know. And then that's where games like Uncharted 4 happens, you know, where you're left to interpret, like, well, what did happen? You know, what came out of this? And I think that's what Uncharted did very well in their series. And that's part of why, like, this whole thing started for me, you know? So,
I love it so much.
Yeah, and so it comes full circle, right? So Benjamin Hornigold already knew about this place, which means this place had to be big enough for them to know. Like, because you have to remember, if they're in Port Royal, if they're in Britain, they know of a place that's in, you know, American territory, or like what is to be American territory, by somewhere or someone, which means some of these stories had to have traveled around throughout history and possibly maybe even influence people like Hornigold to be a pirate, you know, essentially. So like you asked, were pirates like a thing before? Yeah. And pirates were a thing after, like your story. Your pirate story takes place in the 1800s.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's some time after the golden age where things were definitely still happening, even though it wasn't in like the prime time, right? So Avery, like I said, would become one of the most successful pirates before the golden age, and inspiring people like Hornigold, maybe people like Sam Bellamy, people like who ended up doing incredible things to follow in his footsteps, right? So that I actually got that information from a Dr. Manishang Powell, who is also a historian on like pirates and like all that kind of stuff. She had really, really just phenomenal research, man. I couldn't even imagine some of these people where they're diving into history that you don't even know really exists. You know, because like I said, there's so much hearsay within all of this. Yeah. So within a few months, with the help of two guys, he ended up teaming up with two Johns, one John Cockrum and then a John West. And they basically just started doing a whole bunch of runs, like around the islands, basically just trying to get as much capital as they could, a lot of goods that they could sell, and they would bring in over 13,000 pounds to Nassau. And now, to put that in perspective, bro, this was 10 times the amount of the entire value of imports coming into the Bermuda Islands naturally.
Jeez.
And like I said, this was a trade epicenter by this point, because they allowed trade back open. So imagine trade coming from like essentially globally, and these bros in a few months far surpassed that by like 10 times the amount. So you got these people who are essentially the bad guys bringing in the most amount of currency and the most amount of goods to a failed colony, which sounds pretty good to some of those people who are living there already. I mean, at least I would think so. I mean, it's essentially taking and then someone where you don't know where they get the money, but they somehow bring in a whole bunch to fix things, right? So obviously you're going to be like, oh, well, I think they're doing good. So this has already sparked the turn in people's heads that maybe these people aren't as bad as we thought, right? Now, like I said,
Pirates?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, this is a failed colony, so there's still a governor. There's still someone like there. Like, it's not like this place is uninhabited. You think a governor would like someone coming in and doing more than they have? I mean, there's essentially this man is showing them up. And I don't think bro would really like that. And you will find out that bro really doesn't. But when we talk about valuables and we talk about goods, something that a lot of people don't realize is like within the pirate community and everything, goods were not like treasure. It was not gold, not silver, not jewels, all that kind of stuff.
Common misconception.
Yeah, everything was very much handled by things you would import, things you would export, things you would kind of
Spices
use on a
and
daily
foods
basis.
and stuff like that. Right?
Exactly. Like a lot of common things that Hornet Gold was bringing in at that time were things like silks, things like linens, copper. You know, copper, you can make a lot of things. It's very malleable. Things like rum, cocoa, sugar, like we talked about before the Mediterranean sugar trade. You would have to trade that from like a very far away place. So, you know, if you were coming into really good, you know, fine quality sugar, that in itself was a game changer, you know? So you got stuff like that. You got stuff like calico and many other things, you know, that are just basic, or maybe not basic, but just things you could utilize, you know, practically. So like I said, common misconception of like, you know, pirates and, you know, their gold doubloons and like all this kind of stuff, like that wasn't really happening because it was dangerous.
So why do you think that it is that, you know, pirates are commonly seen as having like gold and doubloons and stuff like that?
Yeah, so
Why is that so played up?
I would honestly say it would probably be stories like Henry Avery, stories like, which we'll get into.
Was Henry Avery's like treasury and all that
he actually took out a Spanish treasury ship, or not Spanish, but an Indian treasury ship. And so those are some of the very few cases where you actually really get physical treasure that you're not having to like trade or like having to, you know, sell like goods. And that's why it's very dangerous for people to transport that. It's essentially, think of like the money trucks for banks, right? Like they don't go out at normal times that everyone, you know, would kind of assume, you know, so because they want to be inconspicuous, because it's a dangerous job. Like it's not a job like transporting that much money somewhere. It only takes someone taking you out to get all that money.
Yeah.
You know, and it's essentially the same thing when you think of, you know, these trade routes and like, you know, Navy men going out and stuff. Typically these ships didn't have that. And a lot of the times when you would plunder someone's ship, it was really a lot of goods that they needed to survive their voyages, you know? So it's essentially like Sea of Thieves. Like what do we do, you know, when we like plunder someone? All right, check the food barrels.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Check for ammo. Check for, you know, you check for the stuff that you're gonna need on your journeys first before you really even look for something worth monetary value. You know, so it's definitely a very different way of thinking when you're actually thinking about it like that, right? So within 2 short years, because like I said, this stuff just happened so fast.
Yeah.
Within 2 years of Hornet Gold deciding, let's just keep privateering illegally, bro became the literal figurehead of Nassau.
What?
Like, the people were just like, sorry, governor, no. And bro just became the figurehead. He just became the guy in charge of Nassau with a governor there.
That's insane.
Like, whatever the governor said, they were just like, sorry, big guy over here is the one, not you.
This is our guy.
Like, yeah. So imagine like how much authority you have to have over people.
Yeah.
Off of doing some out of pocket things. So it's really crazy, and that's like part of the lost history that we don't have.
And I'm sorry, you said this is Hornigold?
Yes, okay. Yes. All of this is pretty much stemming from Hornigold and his decision to like kind of start this whole movement going on. Like I said, he wasn't the only pirate. You know, all of these people, as we'll read later, a lot of these people started at the same time, mainly because a lot of these people were at places like Port Royal, you know, places where all of these people are just congregating. It only takes you being in a tavern drunk to be like, you know what? Let's just overthrow the crown. And you get enough drunk people who are mad at the way their situation is. They have nothing else to lose. They're going to do it, you know? And we'll find out later that people like Sam Bellamy may have even been there when Hornigold was starting this whole revolt as well. So, you know, a lot of these people were very heavily connected, even though you kind of think of them as separate beings or entities, all of this is just happening at the exact same time.
Wow.
So Hornigold becomes the figurehead, and he pretty much overthrows the governor entirely. I mean, that's pretty insane.
I mean, it's absolutely
It's pretty insane.
It's crazy to think that you can come to such a status where you can, like,
just do what you want.
yeah,
You can
it's
literally
insane.
just do what you want, and that's like so wild. So with all this being said, he set up essentially a pirate haven, which is Nassau. And even though all this happened, this was not the event that started the whole thing. This is just the whole setup. The thing that started this was a storm that came in a few months later off of the Florida coast, which as I mentioned before, Nassau and the Bahamas and everything is off the Florida coast.
Mm-hmm.
A storm would come and sink an entire Spanish treasury fleet,
Oh.
which treasury fleet, actual money,
Mm-hmm.
and would sink them out in that area, which would then start the whole golden age of piracy and the battle of people trying to get to that gold first.
Wow.
So all of that set up just for that.
Just for a storm to roll in.
Just for a storm to roll in, because now at this point, everything having to do with Hornigold, he has already established an entire pirate haven for this to happen and take place.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So, needless to say, that's the whole start. That is the entire
That's
start
how we
of the
got
whole
to
golden
famous
age, dude.
Golden age of piracy.
Yes. So it really is crazy. It was just a race for the gold, essentially. So I know that was kind of long-winded. It was
that was good.
took you through a little historical journey there, but I feel like if we didn't know how it started, we would have no basis for the incredible stories that come after that, and even the stories that come after the golden age itself. So
Yeah.
So July 1715, as a recap, the Spanish treasure fleet was sunk, right? So we had this big old storm come, wiped out this fleet, and by this time, everybody knows about it. So,
the battle begins.
This is the battle beginning, right? So because we are not going deep into all these other pirates and everything, we just kind of chose specific pirates.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through who got the treasure, but I will tell you it wasn't our boy that we are going to talk about right now.
Okay.
So just gonna let you know right now.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
he had an amazing feat, which we will get to, but it wasn't getting the Spanish treasure.
Okay.
So my main man, my favorite pirate to exist,
This is your favorite?
my favorite pirate.
Oh my gosh, I thought Henry was.
No,
Interesting,
surprise. This is
interesting.
my favorite, bro, because this guy is our age now and was already a captain. So bro is insane,
Living
right?
your dream.
So this story is about my man Black Sam Bellamy.
Black Sam Bellamy.
Now we're going to get it out of the way right now. Black Sam was white. That's not, like that has nothing to do. Has nothing to do with his name being Black Sam Bellamy. He's a white boy. He's a white boy from Britain. But he had jet black hair, so that's apparently where
That's
the
where the
name
black came
that's
from.
where
Got it.
that's apparently.
I was wondering.
Well, I mean, I wondered when I first heard it. I wanted
guess,
because when
I
you look up the
guess.
name Black Sam Bellamy, I mean, he's
just-
not what you would expect just from hearing his name. Like he doesn't look like what I thought.
Sure. Okay.
Same thing with Blackbeard. You would assume he had a black beard. Like it would be weird if, you heard the name Blackbeard and he had
He
like
was a ginger.
That's wild. Synchronicities, buddy. Synchronicities. But
Gingers are
so
scary.
so we got my boy Sam Black.
Sort of an intrusive thought, wasn't it?
Listen, just because they don't have souls, bro, you don't have to. Just because they want mine doesn't mean they're scary, okay?
Doesn't mean they can have it.
So Black Sam Bellamy.
Black Sam Bellamy.
So my man, in 1716, he would have been in his early 20s. So that's why I say around, 22, 23, 24, around that age. The reason why we don't really know about his age or much really about like where he came from is due to the fact that we think he could have grown up monumentally poor. Because back in those times, if you were really poor, there wasn't a lot of records kept about like who you were, who your parents were, where you were conceived at, all that kind of stuff, right? So we really only know very basic things that can be found through digging through like a lot of records, just a lot of records. Now, it has been found by some historians that there is a Samuel Bellamy that was born at this really small town in England, and he grew up very impoverished, and by the age of 10 to 13, joined on a merchant ship. So we can kind of conclude if that's the same person, he would have been someone of very low status. He would have been someone who grew up very poor.
Nothing
Parents were
special,
very
for the
poor.
most
He was
part.
nothing special. Nothing special. A lot of these kids would end up working on merchant ships at a very young age due to the fact that, again, a war was going on and the Navy was very prominent and a lot of people needed goods and services. So that's where we start with our boy. So my man has been at this point sailing for over 10 years of his life just by the early age
And you're talking
of early 20s.
he's in his 20s?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Because by the time he had been sailing, like there's documented proof of like, when he's in his 20s, like we know for sure, like, this is the records we have as starting in his 20s.
Yeah.
And by those records, he is a well-seasoned pirate. And you got to think at this time, he was probably 10 to 13 years old in the Spanish War, fighting in the Spanish War.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's true.
So by the time this war ends, he's in his 20s. He's seasoned. He is rough. People don't even really recognize the fact that he is in his 20s because he's a hardened man, right?
Yeah.
So we find ourselves in Port Royal again. Same place that we see Hornigold in the same year, 1715, right? 1715, 1716, because everything's very loosely based. You know?
Sure.
So we see him there. We also meet a man by the name of Palsgrave Williams, who was a friend and partner of Bellamy. As we can guess, again, by the stories and the lack of records, he grew up poor, which means he didn't have a lot of money. But Palsgrave Williams is actually a generational wealth kid. He's basically like a Nepo baby, essentially. He was just kind of born into money. He was born into all this stuff. Apparently, his dad was also a very hardened sailor. He was a businessman, and he unfortunately passed away. And when his mom remarried, when Palsgrave's mom remarried, she remarried into essentially a crime boss family, which was involved in a lot of illegal trading, a lot of like almost like black market type of like goods, but 1700s type of thing. And so he grew up in this his entire life, which gave him a very good sense of how the game was ran. And he had a very good sense of how to handle money because he had a lot of it. So Palsgrave Williams, I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of like, he decided, basically the same thing with Hornigold, right? This was unfair. This man had been fighting since he was 10 to 13 years old for the crown, and they're going to leave him to hang out and dry? That wasn't going to happen.
Not going to fly.
So my man and Palsgrave Williams, they both formed an alliance. They were friends at a young age, and essentially Palsgrave kind of was the funder while Bellamy was the brains, pretty much. Now, unlike Hornigold, Bellamy had extreme distaste for the crown. There was no, I'm only raiding Spanish and French ships. No. My man was against all of it. He was like, these are the guys that are doing me dirty. I'm going to specifically do them dirty. Which, as you could guess, the crown did not appreciate or approve of.
Probably not. I wouldn't imagine.
So this was a really big thing because he was, again, one of the first, well-known pirates, as we'll get to later. Yeah. He kind of was like the revolutionary starter. He was the one that, hey, the people deserve more. These people are the ones messing with our lives. We can barely live. Essentially, he's like what we were talking about in our politics episode last week. It's like, fight the rich. That was him. Yeah. And that's what he did. Let me tell you, that is what he did.
Went after him.
He went after him. So obviously at this time, even though he has kind of someone funding him and backing him, you still don't have that much money to, buy some big old, like a brigantine or like a galleon or anything. So you got to start small. So there were these carved out, essentially canoes. They were sailing canoes, which were super fast. They were lightweight. They were very easily manageable with the amount of men you could carry. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's not a gunship or anything, but it's very easy to maneuver and very easy to do things with.
Yeah.
So a little bit of time passes, not a lot of time, because my man's reign only takes place within a span of 2 years. So if he's one of the most well-known pirates in the world and he was only in business for 2 years, you got to think of what this man has done. Mm-hmm. Like, my man did not even die at 30. Oh. So that's how he was doing a lot.
A lot of stuff.
A lot. So
I mean, you have to when you start at,
yeah.
What'd you say?
13, dude. 13. This man's seen some things, bro. He has seen some things.
You would be a hardened dude.
Yeah, dude. Just imagine his skin, bro. Like the sunburn.
Tough as nails.
Sunburn from 13 years
to the
old.
salty spittoon. How tough are you?
How tough am I? Let me show you. That was it, bro. Except he was tough. So my man teams up with another guy. His name is Henry Jennings. There's a lot to do with him. Not a great guy, but he's there, right? Mm-hmm. He's just another guy, little piece of the story that's a very long story, right? So Jennings doesn't really need a ship. Bellamy does. So they kind of team up. They make an alliance, and they go after a French sloop by not only attacking it, but attacking it butt naked.
I'm sorry,
that was
what?
the plan. That was the plan. Jennings had nothing to do with this plan. He was basically just essentially like the bronze, right? He had the men to supply to do this.
Sure.
But Bellamy was the brains of the operation.
Okay.
And Bellamy realized he didn't even have to show a weapon to get people to surrender. So, because of this, he won. He won.
He showed them his willies.
They just attacked the ship butt naked, and the French surrendered before anyone pulled out a single knife, single sword, single gun. And that starts the long line of Bellamy realizing that he can control people through fear and crazy.
And willies.
And willies. Can't forget about the willies, bro. The attack from down under.
The salty spittoon.
Hakatui.
Now that's
sorry. That was
on the Woodsmen Podcast.
That was my
history.
own brain. My brain cell. That was my last brain cell given up right there. So, anyways, guys, the Hakatui girl, bro. I don't even know her name,
we should
but
get her on the pod.
I'm okay. I'm okay, dude. I'm okay. So, anyways,
Get back to the topic.
So Jennings gives the ship to Bellamy, and Jennings takes the earnings that was on the ship, pretty much.
Okay.
So this basically ensured that Bellamy would not have to fight people on a canoe, but rather he has a ship that, you know, can hold guns and, you know, fight. He could do something with it, you know?
Yeah.
So once you get through that, a few months pass, and guess who Bellamy meets up with?
Who's that?
Our boy Commodore Hornigold, who is now the Commodore of the Flying Gang. So
What?
yeah, so apparently you don't just get to be a captain, but if there's multiple ships on your side and on your team, you're now a Commodore. And that's what Hornigold is. The figurehead of Nassau that has a big old gang of ships. And guess who's alongside him? Blackbeard himself as his
Dude,
first
what?
mate. Yes.
It's like all the pirates are coming together.
That's
for
what
like
I mean,
a pirate
bro.
family reunion.
So Bellamy just runs into these guys in the middle of, you know, sailing, all this kind of
That's
stuff.
gotta be pretty intimidating.
Be a little bit, a lot of ships.
I'm assuming Hornigold and Blackbeard are at least somewhat known by this point.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So-
you have to remember, bro, not a lot of time has passed. 1715 was when the storm rolled in and started
Yeah.
this whole thing. This is 1716.
That's wild.
So-
Absolutely insane.
This is not
I
a lot
hate
of time.
how fast stuff just happens.
Right?
Back then. Like,
Right? It is wild. So Bellamy runs into them and realizes I can definitely benefit from learning from these guys. Because you have to remember, Hornigold's way older than Bellamy at this point. Bellamy's 24 years old.
Yeah.
Hornigold's like 40, 45, right? So that's a big difference and a lot to learn. So instead of fighting or doing anything like that, Bellamy joins the alliance, right?
I thought you were gonna say something like Bellamy took his pants off.
And scared him into giving his ship.
Okay.
So he joins the alliance, and I would say against Hornigold's better judgment, he instantly just makes Bellamy a captain of one of his ships. And
Really?
the ship name is the Mariana. So out of nowhere. Now, wouldn't you think Blackbeard would probably be a little pissed off too?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a first mate. That is his go-to man, and he's not a captain,
Oh no.
but Bellamy now is, right?
Did Blackbeard cut
So-
Bellamy's weenie off?
No, surprisingly not, bro.
good,
By
good,
this time, I
good.
guess Blackbeard was still pretty chill. I don't even know if he was considered Blackbeard yet. I think he was still just
He
named
was
as Edward
still
Teach or,
Edward.
or Thatch or, you know, because people don't even know what his real last name is,
Mm.
surprisingly enough. They don't know if
Interesting.
it's Teach or Thatch. So you see it quite intermittently changed, like, throughout, like, books and history and, like, by historians and all this
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah.
So, again, because we don't have a lot of information, we don't really know why Hornigold would make a decision like this. And it's kind of believed that Hornigold, just from a short amount of time, could see that this man knows his stuff.
Mm.
And that it was enough that it didn't matter how old he was. It was like, we're going to benefit from this dude being a captain, so we're just going to make him a captain. So that's a lot of power
is
to
a
have
lot
out
of
of nowhere, dude.
Trust too.
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot of trust.
like,
Someone just comes up out of nowhere. I mean, like, I don't think they knew each other.
yeah.
You know, maybe in passing, maybe they've heard of
Yeah,
each
yeah.
other, but no one
But
knows
to
who Bellamy
immediately
is.
give
Like,
the role of captain.
yeah,
like-
exactly. And Bellamy has not gone through as much stuff at all as Hornigold as far
Yeah.
as, like, making a name for himself. So really, he's very unknown. People don't
Wow.
know much about him. So it kind of leads you to believe that bro was a good tactician, at least, you know? So by this time, he's been with them for a little while, maybe a few months, 2 to 4 months, and you can quite clearly see the difference between how Hornigold runs his men and how Bellamy runs his. Because, again, Hornigold is essentially a bootlicker to the crown.
Yeah.
He will not touch anything having to do with Britain. He just wants to pretty much keep being an illegal privateer. He wants to keep just let's raid Spanish, let's raid the French, let's just do all this kind of stuff, be done with it, bring our goods home to Nassau, make a name for ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is not on Bellamy's.
Bellamy had a
that
completely
is
like
completely different story, because he absolutely can't stand the crown itself. And Bellamy is out for blood. He's not out here. I mean, yeah, he really wants to make a name for himself, but he really just wants revenge. He wants to get back at these people who've just been ruining, like, pretty much all of the people he knows, like, their lives. Like, they have nothing now because of the crown. And because of this, a falling out happens.
Uh-oh.
And Bellamy ends up
Between
talking to his
Bellamy
crew
and
Hornigold. And Bellamy and his crew make a plan that, hey, just saying, if you guys sail under me, like, the riches are going to keep coming in, because it doesn't matter who we're fighting. We're fighting anyone that comes in our way. And that sounds a lot better than having to not take certain, scores and everything because of them being British.
Yeah, yeah.
So he starts turning Hornigold's crew slowly against him.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't until Bellamy came out and raided a British ship anyways and got scolded in front of everybody by Hornigold. And Bellamy lit him up. Basically told him, like, you guys are really going to follow this clown? Dude, this clown can't even fight the British.
On Bellamy,
yes, dude.
bro.
This dude is literally twice his age and is still standing up to him, like, calling him a clown. Dude, he's clowning him in front of his whole, like, gang of, like, ships and everything, dude. He's just insane.
Bellamy's built different.
He's built different, dude. Different. Like, it's wild. So he calls him out in front of all of his crew. He's like, just letting you guys know, if you sail with me, bro, I'm not doing this. He's like, let's call for a mutiny. And Hornigold's crew votes him out of his own gang.
Dude, what?
Bellamy is now a Commodore. They instantly vote him as Commodore.
Bro, Blackbeard was probably just like, serves you right.
Blackbeard stayed with Hornigold.
Did he?
Yes. They gave them, like, I think his ship was named the Happy Surprise or something like that. I think it's the Happy Surprise. It's something with happy, but it's pretty funny. Sure. But they go on Hornigold's ship. They sail back to Nassau, and then the whole gang just stays with Bellamy, right? Pretty insane, dude. Yeah. So Blackbeard was the only one, dude. The only one that really was like, okay, I'll stay with him, right? So by this point in time, Bellamy has stepped up. He has stepped up. He's got some big cojones, bro, and he's not afraid to show them.
Well, if he had big cojones before, I can't imagine now. Like,
yeah, dude. I mean, he's powerful. Mm-hmm. He's powerful. Now, I will say the Mariana isn't, a galleon. It isn't, some crazy warship. I mean, it's a good ship, but it's not, what he needs.
You don't always need the biggest ship to be the best fighter on the seas, dude.
And unfortunately, he's going to learn a lesson in humility because of it.
Uh-oh.
Because less than a month later, Bellamy with his one-masted sloop tried to take on a three-masted galleon. And definitely resulted in defeat. He didn't die. Okay, but they definitely got defeated and was like, all right, we need to retreat, right? Mm-hmm. So that was his sign that the Mariana wasn't what he needed for the goals that he had. Mm. Now, by this point in time, you kind of really got to ask yourself, why does he care so much to, like, show that amount of power in such a short amount of time? Now, some of the, I wouldn't say conspiracy, because there's actually, like, evidence of it, and I don't have it in my notes, but I just happen to, like, remember it off the top of my head right now, is people believe before he went on this entire journey, people believe maybe even when he was around 16 to 18, he had met a girl and fell in love, bro. Mm-hmm. And it is believed that after one night of meeting each other and doing the deed, that she got pregnant with his child. And by this time, he had vowed that he would come back for her and make a life for them, because apparently her parents were people in higher authority, owned some things, all that kind of stuff, and did not approve of him whatsoever. Now, this is back when he was, like sailor time before all the pirate stuff. And that he vowed to maybe come back for the kid. Now, a lot of it is speculation, but some historians have found evidence that there was indeed a girl of the name. I will not say the name because I don't really remember it off the top of my head.
Sure.
But there are evidence and records of a woman who died alone, no kids, but when she was younger, found by her neighbors holding an unborn fetus, so possibly complications due to childbirth and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
But she died single and no kids, which was pretty unheard of back then, because really, like, women didn't have a lot of power or authority in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time women kind of just had to be moms.
Yeah,
That was kind of their sole, sadly, it was like kind of their sole purpose back then. Like, they weren't given a lot of power to do anything but be mothers, and be homemakers and all that kind of stuff, So going back to that, does that maybe fuel his drive? I mean, like I said, he was only a pirate for 2 years. So it's like, in those 2 years, look how much he's already accomplished. We haven't even gotten into, like, the main event. Like, he's done a lot in a short amount of time. So a little food for thought. I thought that's very interesting. So moving forward from that, there are some mentions that I have to say that will go into the end of this story. At one point when Bellamy was capturing another ship, all this kind of stuff, because he captured a lot. We're not talking about all of them, but he was ship after ship after ship, just, plundering and all this stuff, dude. Apparently, he had so much influence over people that a 10-year-old kid by the name of John King was basically a prisoner on one of the ships that, he was raiding, comes from a very wealthy family. He's on this ship with his mother. I think it's probably a transport ship because, like I said, in previous times, like, women on ships were kind of just bad luck. Like, women were even really aboard on ships. Yeah. Because with sailors, a lot of superstition goes on the water. So I would assume it's probably a transport ship, transporting people from one place to another. He was with his mom, and he stood up and told Sam that he wants to sail with him and that he will stop at nothing until he lets him join his crew. Now he came from money. Yeah. Like, this kid was not poor or anything. His mom is standing right there, probably crying, essentially, like, what are you doing? And kid said, I would rather die than to be refused to be on your crew. And so Sam took him.
Why?
The amount of power that these people had. Or
but he was 10.
Or the romanticized version of what, like, being a pirate was. I mean, you gotta think about it in that way.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
When you're living a life of, hardship and poverty, and you got people who are essentially coming up and...
at 10 years old was like an Encrustable.
Right?
I
like, these kids had ambitions, dude. These kids had ambitions. But, I mean, it's just so interesting to think that, like, some of these people they just had it. They just had a gift that was able to get people to turn and do what they needed to do. Like, it's just so insane, dude. So my man is out here plundering. My man is out here stealing. My man is out here gathering more people to add to his crew. But something that's not really talked about a lot with a lot of pirates is the fact that not only was Sam, he was not a violent man. He was a man almost known for the people. Black Sam and his gang were essentially calling themselves the Robin Hoods of the sea. meaning that they were
they, like,
they were
giving to the
stealing
poor
and
and
they were
stuff?
giving back.
Oh.
And the track records kind of show that that really kind of was the case. I mean, my man was stealing essentially from the rich, promising people like, hey, if you join our crew, you're going to get equal wages, you're going to be treated fair, you're going to have a vote, you're going to be someone with us. And people would gladly join him. Now,
Wow.
again, some people, they wouldn't, simply because based off of the fact that it's acts of piracy and
Yeah.
that they could get hung by the crown if they were caught.
Mm-hmm.
But most people were all too eager to join this man. And essentially, he was doing that. He was essentially taking people who were living impoverished lives on the brink of death and giving them a job, essentially. And they're now making money. They're making more money than they ever were before with anyone else.
Crazy.
On top of him never hurting people, on top of him never sitting here and making a plan that involved murder. Like, he was a very strategic and tactical pirate. And I think that's, like, part of the appeal of him in general and in history. Because he was such a wild card.
Gotcha.
He was someone
Gotcha.
who was not a typical what you would think of when you think of pirates. You think of them as really bad people. You think of the murdering, sadly, like, a lot of, like, rape and stuff like that would happen at sea as well. Like, none of the records about him or his men ever say anything having to do with that. So it is very interesting to think, like, was this man really... Was he a good guy?
Yeah.
Was he really just someone who was doing this as acts of just, like, I'm sticking it to the man? Because he sounds like my hero. He sounds like exactly what I want in our society right now, to be honest. So,
To steal from the rich and give to the poor.
exactly, dude. That's what we need. They don't need that money. But anyways, when we move forward, by this time, after some plunder, he gets a new ship, a 26-gun ship, called the Sultana. And he basically replaces that as his flagship. And if no one here knows what a flagship is, it's basically just the main ship that the main, commodore or, captain of multiple ships uses as their primary ship. So
Gotcha.
he basically replaces out the Mariana, and he gives it to Paul Graves Williams. So now Paul's grave is like a captain. He's no
Okay,
longer a
okay.
partner or a first
Yeah.
mate or anything like that. He is captaining his own ship with his own crew now, which is already another step up. Mind you, he's already got Hornigold's crew too. So
Yeah.
so he's got some weight behind him now. And as far as we know, he only had that one defeat, and it's looking like he's doing way better now. So by this time, he's deciding, hey, I think I got enough. I think I got enough to take on what I really want, right? So this is still not even enough for him. He still wants more, right?
Okay.
And unfortunately, this is going to play into a lot of people's downfalls. We see that even today. You want too much, you keep
Yeah.
building up, and
It's
then
always
eventually you fall.
when you least expect it that you fail. Yeah.
Unfortunately, bro. Unfortunately. But, I mean, attesting also to Sam's character, every single crew member he had was very multicultural as well. Bro's not out here like a whites only, which you probably would assume it would be like within like the 1700s. A lot of that racism and stuff was happening.
Yeah.
Majority of his crew were either French or Spanish or American or Native American or black or Asian. Like, he had a very multicultural crew, and I think that also contributed to a lot of his success as well, because it showed he had no biases toward anyone, bro. So by that time, he's ready for the big one.
What is the big one?
A 3-masted galleon called the Widda is in his sights with his big old gang of ships. And that's the one. So my man waited. And he followed this ship for 3 days and 3 nights. Didn't shoot a single, didn't see a single shot.
Okay.
over 300 miles, bro followed the ship. And because of that, he scared the captain so bad that instead of putting up a fight, he gave him the ship.
This is. It doesn't make any sense.
Bro gave him the ship
No,
because
I'm starting
even
to,
though
hold on. No. Pause your
Okay,
freaking story.
okay,
Because
okay.
let me get something clear. You're telling me this dude is notorious for being Robin Hood of the pirates.
Yeah.
He was able to take on other fleets by taking out his Willie.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're going to tell me that he just followed a ship for 3 days, and the guy was so afraid that he just gave his ship over.
Now, a
This is
lot of
starting
that
to-
has to probably do with the fact that he had a lot of ships coming after them.
I guess.
But apparently bro was vastly outnumbered. Apparently, even though this was a big old ship with a lot of guns and all this kind of stuff, he didn't have the crew to manage it. The crew was too small to put up any sort of fight against not just one ship, but like a lot. Like a lot of ships, you know. We're talking like at least 6 ships.
Wow.
You know, I can't give you the exact number, but it was a big, you know, Hornigold's crew was big. You know, it was not a small crew. I mean, he was the leader of Nassau by this point.
Mm-hmm.
So he accumulated all these people.
That's true.
Including a bigger ship and including the ship he had before, now being ran by his other, you know, his first mate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they get to the deck of the ship. And they just surrender peacefully. They're like, we want no trouble. We don't have enough people. Don't kill us. Which we all know Sam probably wasn't going to kill anyone to begin with.
Yeah.
He even extends an offering for them to join his crew. Like, this is a man of class. This was a man of class. And obviously, a lot of people refused. Obviously, sometimes you got to take people by force, which he probably did, you know. So he probably kept these fools, you know, prisoner or whatever. But never killed him, never did anything crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where it gets interesting. Now, we talked about before with the Spanish treasure galleon that sunk.
Yeah.
With all that, you know, 3 gold doubloons, you know, you know, all that stuff. Obviously, he wasn't able to get to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Little did he know, when he looked into the hull of the Widow, the entire thing was full of real treasure. Real gold, real jewels, real silver, textiles like calicos, freaking linens, silks, full. Apparently, it was out here transporting goods.
Oh my gosh, dude.
And that's why they were running, because they knew they couldn't get away.
Oh my gosh.
So they just surrendered this big old ship with what I read, and unfortunately I don't have the actual like source on there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was from another historian that happened to be on the Real Pirates podcast.
Mm.
It would have equated to billions of dollars.
Oh my gosh.
Billions of dollars, dude.
That's wild.
And this is towards, I think, around October of 1716. So this is like towards the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
Well, it didn't last long. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It was actually February of 1717. Oh. So this was within, so the beginning of the year. Okay. Not the end. But a few months later, our boy's luck would finally run out.
It's about time.
It's a sad one. I won't lie.
No.
I won't lie. It's pretty sad. Like when you hear about everything this man accomplished within 2 years, it is sad how this man went.
Okay.
So, again, this is only maybe 2 months after this phenomenal score. They're headed back to essentially home. They're basically going back to where this all started.
Yeah.
In New England.
Mm-hmm.
They're traveling back. People even believe that he was maybe even traveling back to find the girl.
With the son, or with the child.
Yeah. And the storm rolls in.
Oh no.
And it rolls in at night. And it pushes them out. And they try and get away from the rocks. They don't get away from the rocks.
No.
It pushes them into a sandbar. And it sinks the entire ship. And Sam Bellamy dies on that ship.
Oh my gosh,
along
dude.
with all of the treasure. And the only reason we know about this is because one of the few people that Sam kept prisoner on the ship because he was a cartographer. It's the only reason why. He was like, we need a cartographer. Normally I'd let you go, but we need you on this ship, so you have to be forced to stay on this ship. Bro washed up on land, and he survived. And he was able to get to someone's house and tell them everything that happened.
Wow.
They were able to find the shipwreck. And by the time people found out, the whole ship was picked clean of its treasure. And they never found the body of Sam Bellamy.
Dude. That's such a wild ending
Yeah.
to such a wild story.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
Dude. Could you now you know why this man is my favorite pirate, bro. Like he lived a life that just genuinely sounds unbelievable.
yeah, it
Like
does.
it is unbelievable that you could have such incredible luck
Yeah.
to then die by a storm, dude. You don't even die by the crown. You just die by a storm, a freak accident.
Wow.
With a ship you just got like 2 months ago. With a treasure that no one has ever physically seen that amount of treasure before. Gone.
What a legend.
And that's it.
That's crazy, dude.
That's the whole thing, bro.
That's super interesting.
So needless to say, Sam Bellamy, wherever you are, bro, you're a G.
You're a G.
I don't even care that you had to
You
do
got
some
the
crazy
Woodsman
stuff, dude.
stamp of approval.
You are a G, bro. You're certified because I just couldn't imagine doing that much in my life in such a short amount of time, dude.
Mm-hmm.
So, bro is less than 30.
Wow.
Lived a life. Lived a
Quite a life. Quite a life indeed.
But I mean, he didn't just live a life though. You also got someone who has a crazy story.
This is very true. This is very true.
And it's actually quite far, in the future
it's
too.
a little later,
So,
yeah. It's a little
but
later on.
You kind of see some of the same aspects though, which I'm pretty excited to finally get cooking. Bro.
Yes,
So,
yes. Okay. I am so excited to tell you about this story because, like we've mentioned, we've been putting off this pirate episode for God knows how long.
Dude, you've had this information for a minute.
I've been invested in this story. Because we've only just started to do the real pirate episode finally, I've only just now done my extensive research, but I did hear of this pirate originally through a TikTok reel, and it was just sort of something in passing. I didn't even really think twice about it, but the thing that caught my eye was that it was one of the most notorious female pirates in history.
Heck yeah, dude.
And so I was like, you know what? You don't really hear a lot of stories about all the female pirates. There's a couple well-known ones, but this one,
like Anne Bonny and
stuff
Mary
like that.
Reid, and I think those are the only two I know of, bro.
Yeah, dude, you don't hear about it as much. And I was like, okay, I wonder what this is about. And so I looked it up, and the name of this person is named Xingxi, I believe. Xingxi.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay.
And that's her original name. In around the year 1800, I'm just kind of going to give you the tall tale of Cheng Yi Sao. And we'll get to why that's her name in a minute.
Yeah.
But originally, around the year 1800, she likely had a job as a prostitute. I guess this was very common at the time for women to make their money. They weren't really seen as not nearly as equal as obviously they're seen now. And so this was before she actually met a person named Cheng Yi. Cheng Yi Sao basically means the wife of Cheng Yi. That's basically
Okay,
what
okay.
that's from my understanding. That's what that like translation means. So
Dang, so she don't even have a real name?
well, her real name is Ching Shi, I believe.
Yeah, but they made what? He just made her get rid of her name? That's crazy.
It's like, well, I don't know the complete like background of like what the traditions are or anything, but I guess that's kind of what happens is you
foul.
change your name to something like that. So the reason this was interesting was because Cheng Yi, the original man, actually was a like known pirate at the time in the Chinese, the South Chinese waters, I believe.
Okay.
And he had a crazy army. He already had a fleet of 600 ships. Like he was
what?
Yes, he's one of the like biggest known like pirates at the time in those waters.
How do you even
40,000 men, like in this like, I think they called it a confederation, the Pirate Confederation at the time. 600 ships, 40,000 men.
how do you fit them all in a port?
Dude, you don't because there's so many of them. This actual confederation was it was so big that they actually split it up into 6 different divisions, each division led by its own like pirate captain of like that section of the fleet.
Oh, so a commodore.
Is that what it's called?
It's a person who's like in charge of like a bunch of like ships in like one like, little group or something. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's pretty much what happened. So because his whole
What?
like group of pirates that he basically, and so the reason, by the way, I didn't include this in my notes, but one reason for why it's not like he just sort of decided to become a pirate and then he had the best numbers.
Yeah.
The piracy, from what I understand, I don't know the full detail of it, but it actually was part of his family. So it actually kind of spanned
so it's like
back.
a generational.
Yeah, he wasn't the first
like,
generation of
takeover.
piracy in his family. So,
dude, so
he like
legacy
inherited
of
this,
pirates,
yeah.
bro. Mm-hmm. That's what. How does family even live that
dude,
long?
I have no idea. It baffles me sometimes.
That's okay. I'm interested. I'm
so
invested.
During his time of piracy, he eventually landed, and I feel a bit bad for not knowing exactly where Xingshi was located, but he basically made his way to their shores, and it's not actually clear. It doesn't say in the history like how they connected specifically. It's thought that through potentially her prostitution like kind of job and role that they met somewhat
like,
through there
tavern or
something like that
or...
where she may have been offering her services, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so they met, the both of them, Xingxi and Cheng Yi, and they basically hit it off.
Obviously.
They kind of liked each other. And so they basically quickly got married, I believe, within the actual like first year of their meeting. So like they got to know each other very fast, and Xingxi basically became Cheng Yi Sao.
Bro
very
fell in
fast.
love with a stripper, bro. That's like rule number
I have
one,
to clarify,
isn't it?
it's believed she was in.
Okay, well, I mean, if.
Yeah.
Bro fell in love with a stripper.
Bro fell in love with a stripper.
That's like rule number one. You can't fall in love at a club. That's crazy.
Yeah, you gotta make sure that you put the drinks down before you actually decide on
before you make the decision.
the big M.
I mean, she inherited into the family well.
Yeah, oh yeah. So
anyways, ships.
In the year 1807.
Okay.
Now they've been together for a decent couple years, and basically, it's unknown how he died, but Cheng Yi had passed away during November of 1807. It's likely
so they were able to get it pretty specific to the month.
Pretty specific, which is actually very interesting.
Yeah.
It was likely due to either a battle or like weather conditions of his sailing.
Okay.
So
he didn't go down with the ship,
No.
but he just
but he died like,
on the ship or
on the waters more than likely. So
he died doing what he loved, I guess.
exactly, yeah. But because he was gone, and he and his family line had built up such a strong and intense like pirate fleet. The other 5 captains, you remember I mentioned there were 6 divisions.
Yeah.
The other 5 captains of the different divisions basically had to come together and figure out, well, now what?
Who's going to be the leader?
Who's going to step
gonna
up now?
what?
Exactly.
Like,
and they pretty much came to the conclusion that who should take up the opportunity should be Cheng Yisao. And the reason was because she sort of, while Cheng Yi was still alive, she basically kind of took on the role as not captain, but like second mate in a way. Not exactly second mate, but she basically did all the same like duties that Cheng Yi had.
Basically, like essentially being the quartermaster, but like with no captain there.
Yeah, she took control. She had all the skills and reputation in order to take on this role, and the men thought that she would basically be the best choice in this situation.
See, and that's so interesting because with pirate history, like women were bad luck to even be on ships. So
that was another reason I thought this was crazy, because I was like, you're going from somewhere where, like I mentioned, you didn't have a good upbringing, Xingxi.
You literally came from like lowest of the low, essentially,
and now you're leading one of the strongest pirate armies in the Chinese Ocean. Like, it's insane,
wild. Okay,
and let me tell you, buddy,
she killed it.
She killed it.
She killed it.
She grew so fast and almost like not doubled, but like it rose the numbers already with what Cheng Yi was able to accomplish.
Yeah.
She was able to move the numbers that I gave you, 600 ships and 40,000 men. She grew it to 800 ships and 70,000 men. Like under her...
She added 200 more
That's
ships?
what I'm saying. And these ships... I also didn't include this in my notes, but I was reading up on some of them, some of the ships that they were talking about that she owned and like she had in her fleet, and like some of them were big boys,
like man of war, galleon type. Like
I wouldn't say quite galleon man of war type, but like big enough to where like they could store smaller ships on them. They had completely well off like cannonry. Is that how you would say it?
Cannonry. Cannon fire.
And so. They and one thing that like really came out of her rule is that they became, I wouldn't say like notorious for like wanting to start a fight, but like when they entered a fight, they'd win. Like, and this was against Chinese authorities. This was against European authorities too. Like these, like their piracy fleet basically became one of the strongest fleets out there, and no one really could stop them. Even like they became one of those known names where it was like, I really don't
like once you hear their name, like I'm just surrendering. I don't even want to deal with that.
Exactly.
Wow, bro, what?
Dude, it's insane. Okay, so a little pivot now in the story. Around the time of her like growing her numbers and being able to take on naval fleets of like big proportions, one of the, I believe it was one of the pirate captains, his name was Cheng Pao, I believe. He's one of the 6th Division pirates.
Okay.
And he basically kind of started to interact with Cheng Yisao after Cheng Yi's death.
Oh, interacted.
Interacted. Started getting to know each other better. Started to work on
So they were bumping uglies.
He quickly became her second mate on her fleet. I believe that her fleet was named the Red Flag Fleet. I don't want to quote that though, but I believe
that's a hard name.
And she commanded 200 of the 800 ships. Like in her own fleet.
So she kept the same 6 guys, and she just went, I'm just gonna take on 200 myself.
Yeah, and the other, it could have been isn't that crazy? It's wild. And so,
dude, good for her, but honestly, that's so crazy. Okay.
So they basically started to have a liking for each other,
bumping uglies, and he rose to the ranks.
So he basically rose to her second in command, and his like platform in the whole fleet basically rose, and he started to make a name for himself.
Okay.
Like a lot of pirates during the golden age of piracy, as we were talking about, Cheng Pao was very partial to his style. A lot of like pirates had a like signature look, and so his apparently signature look was sporting like a black turban and a purple cloak. And so I kind of like want to like look up
Like
photos and see if
royal-
like there are maybe
oh,
like some
dude.
thought images of Cheng Pao, because from what it sounds like, that's kind of a cool
That
look.
sounds sick. Okay, that's someone I would not want to mess with. Like, could you imagine looking through the eyeglass at like someone's ship and you see bro decked out, dude, just decked out in some purple? Like, I'd be like, all right, bro, you're rich. Take my stuff. Like,
You can just have all my things.
That's a royal color there, bro. Like, just take it. You can have it.
So back to Cheng Yisao. She, like I mentioned, grew in power. She started to become a notorious pirate that everybody feared, and she had some strict rules that she would start to put in place. I didn't write down all the rules, but I thought it was interesting, like that she took her rules very seriously. One of them being like, I know one of them was that no women will be abused or mistreated, whether they be random women on the shore or even like slaves or captives that they have on board.
Heck yeah.
So
bro.
like that's one, like she had a lot of rules like that,
And I would not cross her.
You shouldn't,
I would
because
not
you know what
cross
happens
her.
if you cross her? First degree of crossing, you get your ear slit.
Oh.
Second, execution.
Okay, so not even 3 strikes you're out.
Nope,
You're
2
just
strikes
done.
and you're done. It's over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
dude, it's wild.
I mean, how would she execute them? Was she like just?
The article I was reading didn't get into the specifics of it, but yeah, I would assume probably gunfire or making them, like, I guess, walk the plank. But
Unless she like, what is it called? Is it like barnacling someone or?
are you talking about that
Or
thing
they-
where like they put the person
Yeah,
down at the bottom
so
of the
they,
boat?
So they like tie a rope on their arms and they tie a rope around their legs and they throw them overboard, and then they just keep bringing them up side to side like under the boat. And if you didn't die by your back getting broken by like hitting the freaking the hole, because it's like it kind of cuts in the middle, so obviously it's like it's not rounded on the middle, like there's like a like a little trench almost, like so it depended on how hard people were pulling up, bro, they could just break your back out over that. But if you got unlucky enough to survive, you would just get your skin ripped off by all the barnacles and stuff under the hole.
Oh my
Or
gosh,
drown.
dude.
So it's like the worst. That's like that's way worse than walking the plank. Like way worse. I would take the sharks.
Yeah, no,
I would take the
too, 'cause
sharks over that.
The sharks probably would get it done faster. You'd probably
Yeah, I would hope so.
yeah. Would you be okay drowning if if you had to compare that to the other ways of dying back in the days of piracy?
I don't know. I heard drowning like hurts because like your lungs are just on fire. Cause you're getting no oxygen.
Would you rather
or
burn
anything
or
to them.
drown?
Drown,
Yeah.
dude.
I would
Cause you know
rather
how
drown.
long you could live like being like cooked. You're essentially being cooked, bro. Like cooked alive.
You become a
That's
chicken nugget far
wild.
before you actually pass away.
Oh, yeah, no, drowning.
Got
Drowning
it.
for sure.
All right, let's get back on topic.
So back to execution.
Back to execution. So I just thought the fact that she places these like strict rules and like really enforces them also like speaks to like her like badass kind of character.
Yeah, it speaks to her power, and
Mm-hmm.
it speaks to the respect people have for her.
Especially
to be
like
honest.
again, to say the least, a woman at the time.
A woman
you know?
on a ship, like that's just
it's
so
insane.
unheard of. Like,
Now, around this time, one of the other fleet captains of the 6 divisions apparently got jealous of Cheng Pao's position status.
okay,
Not necessarily like the whole him taking a liking to Cheng Yisao, but this guy's name was Kuo Pao Tai?
Kuo Pautai.
Dude, props to you for even attempting
I'm attempting.
these names,
I'm
dude.
really. I hope I'm not butchering these names. If I am,
We mean no disrespect.
Write a mean
We
comment
just
or
don't know
something.
how to read. So
yeah, exactly. But this guy, we're gonna call him Kuo. Kuo refused at one point to help Cheng Pao's fleet division fight against the Chinese and Portuguese ships that were attacking them, because he was angry that Cheng Pao had gotten this status from like spending so much time with Cheng Yi-sao.
does
that make sense? I know, like, it's a lot in the
So
names
like
are-
literally just out of spite, he's like
Literally
nah.
out of spite,
He's
didn't
like,
help the
nah.
fleet that he's technically on a team on. You know, like
Wow. What?
that's the thing.
That's like essentially like just being like missing in action type,
Yeah.
like just leaving
and
your
it
post.
also
like,
speaks to how big this fleet is, that they can start to get so widespread that all these different fleets and divisions can start to like not like each other or have their own issues amongst themselves.
yeah,
you know?
like imagine keeping in line 50 people on one ship. Mm-hmm. Now imagine like expanding that by 800 ships, bro.
yeah.
Like what?
And so Cheng Pao did not take lightly to that.
And I bet she didn't take lightly to that either.
Well, you know, it's funny that they don't actually, because this is an interesting stage of the story, because, you know, not to spoil the ending completely, but it was only a little bit after this time that her whole fleet pretty much was done. And so,
no.
and it's not really
What?
what you think, actually. So Cheng Pao, being pissed at Kuo for not helping them in this battle where they needed them,
Yeah.
decided to actually go and fight Kuo and fight army against army.
Oh.
And the thing that makes me really
Okay.
sad about this story, because like I feel like you might, as well as I was when I first read this, was starting to get really into the drama, right? You're starting to be
Yeah,
like,
dude,
oh
it's
man,
like
I wonder who's going to win.
It's like a love triangle, but with war, dude.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
what?
Apparently, Cheng Pao, I really kind of wanted him to win for Kuo. Like,
Same, bro. That's
but
some disrespect.
According to the history I read, Cheng Pao lost this fight. It wasn't like
Oh.
their fleets were still intact, but apparently, however this battle went down, like he did not win in the grand scheme of things. So I'm assuming that maybe they like
Oh, no.
potentially lost lives.
So my question would be then, only because we've touched on the Golden Age, we've touched on Bellamy, and we've touched on like a lot of these ages don't seem to be what we think they are. Mm-hmm. Would this possibly be a situation where an older person is mad because maybe a younger person, a less experienced person,
It could be. I didn't do
taking
enough
over?
research
Like,
into Kuo or Cheng's like history and like ages and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was just trying to find more stuff about Cheng Yi.
yeah.
But it could be. You never know.
It's also interesting too because, you know, when you think of like the pirate code and you think of like all this stuff, a lot of it was very democratically based, like as far as you can vote in and out, like your captain. Mm-hmm. You can voice an opinion on like whether you like or dislike certain things, like
yeah.
because this is set farther in the future, this is like early 1800s. Mm-hmm. Did that pirate moral code kind of maybe just disappear, and like it was more like, hey, if you question me, we're just gonna fight now, you know?
It
Like,
could be. I
like
mean,
that's such an interesting shift
Yeah.
on such a little amount of time
Mm-hmm.
that has like progressed in between, like, you know, from like Bellamy to like now.
Yeah.
You know, like, so that's
I still
interesting. That's
keep
interesting.
going back to the fact that I think the amount of numbers of people, like you
that
think
in general is just
it completely
wild.
changes the dynamic. It's not like you're leading a fleet of 10 ships where you can like all dock one area and like
yeah, where you can
get ready
kind
for
of
the
like,
next
hey,
trek.
we
Like,
need to get us all together
no,
to like
this
talk
is
things out.
tens of thousands of people. Like,
and depending on how far you are,
I don't even remember to feed my dogs.
dude.
I
I
could
can't even
not
remember
take-
what I ate for breakfast, dude. And I'm supposed to like be in charge of thousands upon
70,000
thousands of
men?
people.
No way.
So like, think of how hard any communication would be at that point, because like depending on how far some of these people are,
Exactly.
like
yeah.
there's no phones. You can't just, like, you got to send someone out, like, maybe months at a time. Because not only you got to get the message there, you got to get it back.
Yeah.
And you got to have enough food, and you got to have enough, like, supplies to last that. That's
It's
okay. Wow.
absolutely
Like,
crazy.
that's wild.
And then, so this is where it kind of, like, the story, I'm sure it may probably just be condensed a bit, but where I thought it took an interesting turn. Because apparently after this fight between Kuo and Chang, they both sort of started to realize that their numbers, their days as pirates were numbered. And specifically Kuo. Kuo started to realize that, like, after this fight, which that makes me think also that this fight was so drastic that maybe they lost so much stuff and, like, so many lives could have potentially been lost that they were like, I think it's time to hang up the curtain. We may have won this battle, but
Wow.
this is what happened.
He messed up so
they
bad.
surrendered them, or I'm sorry, Kuo surrendered himself and was pardoned. And this is going to be a strange pattern that I wonder if maybe either you could speak to if you know, or maybe you can just contemplate with me. To spoil the story a little bit, before I get to the final, like, little details, Kuo, Chang, and Sheng Yi Sao were all pardoned after giving up piracy. And
Okay.
Chang and Sheng were actually able to, like, well, actually, let me finish my statement, and then we can kind of talk about the pardons,
Okay.
So, after Kuo had stepped down, Cheng Yi Sao, having seen her fleet go against each other and all this, like, terrible situation happen, also started to realize that maybe it's time to, like, calm down.
Things are getting a little heated.
She's probably starting to realize how many people she's, like, trying to control and, like,
I mean, essentially, you're
lead.
Controlling, like, a whole city, bro.
Yeah.
70,000 people. That's wild.
I can't imagine, dude. And so in the year 1810, Cheng Yi Sao sailed her fleet of 260 ships, I believe, from the Red Flag Fleet, to the harbor, demanding a pardon. Like, it's funny because I don't think Kuo actually demanded a pardon. He was lucky enough to get one, but
He was just there.
Cheng Yi Sao's final, like, statement of power was sailing 260 ships straight to the harbor and saying, "We're done, but you're gonna pardon us. Try and stop us," like that kind of thing.
So
like, it was a
this
threat.
still
kind of thing.
within the like the Asian
Yes.
area?
I
Like
believe
the-
she sailed to.
I have no other way to say that.
Some
'cause
part.
I don't
No,
know, but-
I'm struggling with it too. It was definitely, like, on the border of China somewhere. Like,
Okay.
I'm not sure the exact location off the top of my head, but
Well, because you were asking about the pardons, and the only ones that I really know for sure that I can speak on are the crown pardoning pirates to try and get them to stop before they just took more drastic measures and, like, just started hunting them down to kill them, essentially. But
Interesting.
again, this is, like, at a way farther time, so I don't even know, like, really what any of those rules are, like, who is in charge, who
I should have
liked
done
them,
more,
who
like,
didn't
actual,
like them.
like, piracy like research on that timeline, but I was just, like, so
I mean, the story's heavy. There's so much going
it's
on.
so much, right?
Like,
And, like, I'm sure, and there was so much, like, there were so many details I left out that I could have talked about for hours about.
Dude, yeah, you
her
have to
fleets
condense
fighting in
some of
battles
it.
against these, like, naval armies. But
she is a G, dude.
the story comes to a close, where after she was pardoned and Chang Pao was also pardoned, they ended up getting married, and they had a kid. A son, to be
okay.
exact. And after that, they lived together. She ran a small business. I can't remember now. I didn't write it in my
Was it
notes.
a tavern?
It was something like that. I don't want to say anything specific and be called an idiot for not knowing, but yes, she ran her own business of some kind, and she
Business.
lived until the age of 69.
Wow.
Long time. Yeah, she lived a long time.
Wow. Okay, dude. She.
Died in 1844.
What a legend.
It's a crazy story, right? Like,
The fact that she lived that long period is wild in that
Yeah.
time.
I think when I first heard about the story, what caught my eye
was that a female pirate led over 80,000 people. Like,
and made it and survived.
Yeah.
Survived what sounds like unscathed.
Yeah, it pretty much seems that way. I'm sure that there are
Wow.
numerous battles she was in where, like, she got hit hard and stuff like that. But, like,
Yeah.
the thing that the history I was reading kept, like, you know, pushing down was the fact that her naval ships or her fleet was so strong, she could take on, like, Chinese and
Whoever.
Portuguese
Like,
armies
whoever.
without any hesitation. It was nuts. So,
Dude, I mean, something to end off with that.
okay.
1840s, right?
Mm-hmm.
1840s. You realize in America, the Wild West is happening?
Whoa, I didn't even think about that. Wow.
Like, think of, like time. Things are happening fast, bro. Like, that is crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's nuts. I think this has got to be one of my favorite episodes.
All right,
ever.
so Cowboys next, going straight into it through history, bro.
No.
No, that's
I'm gonna
way
need a
too
breather
much.
before I do research
We
on
need a little bit more
the
of a
Old
fun
West.
topic because
but
this one was heavy, but
Mhm.
this one was...
no, this was a good one for sure.
So, if you could be a pirate,
Okay.
would you? Like, cause you have you. Like, no, I'm sorry. I should have rephrased that better. But like, if you were in that time, right? Say if we're like in say the golden age of piracy,
Mm-hmm.
like, do you think you could justifiably moralize doing some of the things that pirates had to do in order to make a living and survive? Do you think you could do it, or do you think you'd end up just being a landlubber, taking whatever job you could to try and survive? Or do you think you could rough it out?
I stand behind the idea that no villain thinks they're a villain.
That's okay.
And
Yeah,
I
facts.
think that in that time, life was a serious struggle, and people were ripped off, people died, people didn't live as long. It was a hard life. And so I think living as a pirate, I could see it completely being justified, having to, you know, go and do potentially unethical things
Yeah.
to, you know, better and protect those you love and protect yourself.
Yeah.
I could completely see it being understandable, especially in that time.
I
You,
mean,
you think to yourself that it's for my survival. It's what I have to do.
100%, dude. I mean, especially on the golden age side. I mean, those guys were fighting to survive. Like, and everything they've ever known was living on a ship, dude. Like, just imagine the government that's supposed to take care of you just screwing you over so heavily to the point where it's like, I have no other option than to be a quote unquote bad person.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, whatever could drive man to get to that level, there's got to be some sort of justification to it, you know? So, well, this is a great episode,
This
dude.
was a great episode. I loved it. I had so much fun.
I'm excited to see what next week's gonna bring, because I
hope
have
you
no
guys
idea.
enjoyed it. I mean, we've
I
been putting
really
this off
hope-
for so long.
I just hope you guys weren't bored, because this one was pretty
This
heavy
was
on the
interesting.
research, but you know, this is a really fun one to research for
It
sure.
was absolutely so much fun.
Heck yeah, dude.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching. We've been your hosts, Joey Rucker.
And Brent Murphy. Later, Gators.
You're...
The Woodsmen Podcast is actively reading and responding to anything and everything on Instagram and our email. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the show, you can email us at thewoodsmanpod@gmail.com. Make sure to keep up with all things Woodsman related on Instagram at WoodsmanPod. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the Woodsmen Podcast with video exclusively on YouTube and Patreon. Make sure to follow our personal accounts at Strange Kids and Piemaster J on all platforms.
The Woodsmen Podcast is co-produced by Brent Murphy and Joey Rucker.
Engineered by Brent Murphy and edited by Joey Rucker.
Additional editing by Brent Murphy and blood, sweat, and tears by the both of us.
Any additional content by the Woodsmen Podcast may not be used without our permission. Copyright the Woodsmen Podcast.
And remember, dead men tell no tales.